Is this the worst celebrity relationship ever? Hello everyone, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the star of your own life. So today we're going to talk about the relationship between Kristen Bell and Dax Shepard. It's very controversial and we're going to dive into this. Before I get started, my usual disclaimers. First of all, I don't know anybody in this video. I don't know anybody personally. I do not know what people are like behind closed doors. So I'm simply basing my analysis on the public images and public personas of these celebrities and public figures. And honestly, at the end of the day, this isn't really even about the celebrity. This is actually about the lessons that we can take from these celebrities and these public figures and their relationships that we can take into our own lives so we can have happier, healthier lives and relationships. Let's get into Kristen Bell and Dax Shepard. A lot of people are saying that they're like the worst celebrity relationship. I think that's exaggerating. Not saying that they're a good relationship. And I actually think that their relationship is not that unusual. I'm not saying it's healthy, but I don't think it's that unusual. I think there's a lot of aspects to their relationship and a lot of things about their dynamic that are quite common. So I think this could be helpful to a lot of people. I really had not been super familiar with their relationship. So the research I did was I went back and I watched or listened to a podcast episode. I believe it was Dax Shepard's like first podcast episode or one of his first podcast episodes. It was just audio and it was him and Kristen. They actually admitted that they had just had a fight before they filmed the podcast, so that there was a lot of tension during the podcast and stuff like that. So I listened to that. I also went and listened to a very recent podcast episode. It was like from about a month ago of Dax Shepard's podcast where he was interviewing Kristen and her co-star from her current Netflix show. And then I kind of watched some clips and stuff of Dax and Kristen here and there on the internet. I realized clips are not the best way to get information about things. I didn't have time to watch like 100 podcast episodes with like him or her or something like that. Now, one of the reasons that people are talking about Kristen and Dax right now specifically is because Kristen Bell made an anniversary post, or I believe it was their 12th anniversary, and this got a lot of people talking. So Kristen Bell's anniversary post, the caption read like this: "Happy 12th anniversary to the man who once said to me, I would never kill you. A lot of men have killed their wives at a certain point. Even though I'm heavily incentivized to kill you, I never would." So there's a lot of people that are saying this is tone deaf, that this is sort of making light of domestic violence and things like that. Some people are saying it's just humor, it's their style of humor and things like that. I worked for many, many years as a professional comedian. I have made money off of being funny. So I think I'm a bit of an expert in the humor category. I also love dark humor. So I will state that right off the bat, which is probably why I may not have read this and thought it was as offensive as other people, because I do know that Kristen and Dax do have kind of a twisted sense of humor. And honestly, like taking that into consideration, I still think the post was, it was off. Like it was not good. And part of it was the fact that it kept going. He once said to me, I will never kill you. From like a dark humor perspective, I kind of get that. But then like to then go on to a lot of men have killed their wives. And even though I've been incentivized to kill you, I never would. Like the fact that she kept going. And there's some people that are saying that they think that this is a cry for help on Kristen's part. It's possible. And honestly, if she does need help, like if this is like an actual cry for help, I hope she gets it. I do. I'm inclined to think that this is a joke that didn't land. Like I think that she thought this was going to be more of a dark humor thing, and it just didn't work. But it worries me because again, I think she was going for humor, but you know, again, and I say this as a former professional comedian, behind humor there's usually a kernel of truth, and I think this might be a sign that their relationship is not as healthy as they want to think that it is. I also think some people have pointed out that Kristen has said, and I couldn't find the direct quote of this, but that Kristen has made a comment that she blacks out sometimes in arguments with Dax, and a lot of people are saying that that's a typical sign of abuse. And I mean, I think blackouts are dangerous, and I think that that's concerning. I did notice in some of the interviews that I have seen with Kristen, she harps a lot on the idea that she has a terrible memory, and she always brings up having a terrible memory about things. Sometimes that could be a sign of a deeper problem, whether it be a deeper psychological problem. I got the impression that she's making it sound like in the interviews I heard that this was something from like her past, like pre-Dax, that she was having issues with memory. She can also like recall lines from like TV commercials that she's been in 20 years ago or something like that. So, you know, and she's kind of joked that she has a memory for certain things but not other things. Like, again, I hope she's okay. I do. You know, memory loss can be a sign of a lot of different things. I hope if it is something that is more serious, I hope she's getting the help that she needs. It could be a sign of trauma or an abusive relationship, and if this is that, I hope she gets help. I really do. But it's not automatically a sign of that, and I think the fact that she is making it sound like she has memory loss from like childhood and stuff like that, I think she's mentioned being in therapy and stuff, so I mean, hopefully she is getting the help that she needs. And you know, maybe she just does have a poor memory, and you know, in certain areas and certain things, and you know, that can often come from being really stressed out and really distracted and things, which, you know, could be because of her husband and her marriage or something like that. It could be other things in life. I mean, who knows? Like, I don't necessarily think that this is like an automatic sign that she is in an abusive situation, but it could be a sign of that. And hopefully she has enough people around her that could step in and help her if it did turn out that that was the situation she was in. Here's the thing with Kristen Bell. I don't think that she's with Dax Shepard because she's just so insecure and doesn't think she could do better. Because there are women who are in relationships and settle for men that have certain behaviors and act a certain way because they are insecure and don't think they can do better. I don't think that's Kristen's case. Based on everything that I have seen about Kristen Bell, she wants to rescue everybody. Like, she wants to rescue everybody, everything, animals, kids, people. Like, that's her vibe. Like, she has like a savior complex. I think she also has a lot of mothering energy around her. And when I saw an interview, it was a clip of an interview with Dax Shepard where he was talking about how he was like so cocky about relationships when he was younger, that when he first kind of started seeing Kristen, he was kind of like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to be with somebody like Kristen who's so good and generous, and somebody who will see like a wounded animal on the side of the road and have to pull over and stop and help and find the dog's owner, and like, I don't know if I want to be with somebody like that. I think not realizing that like he is the wounded animal that she's trying to rescue. Like, that's why she's with him. Like, she's with Dax Shepard because he's the broken boy that she wants to rescue and save. Like, and I think Kristen's in on this. Like, I don't think that she's just like, oh, I don't think I deserve better, so I'm gonna put up with this. I really think that she feels like she can love him enough to heal him. Like, they even made a reference to, in the podcast interview they did together, where she made some comment about rescuing animals, and he's like, oh, you rescue everything, and it's like, including him. Like, she's trying to rescue him. And again, I think she's in on it. Like, I think she knows he's flawed. I don't think she sees him as perfect. I don't think she's putting him up on a pedestal. I think she wants to rescue him. She wants to save him. She thinks that she can love him enough to heal him. I find that relatable. I've done that before. I think a lot of women have probably done that before. It's not necessarily out of an insecurity, but it's this like desire to, it's actually like a maternal instinct in a lot of women. It's like, but you don't have a baby, so you're like, ooh, let me mother the people around me, you know what I mean? I've fallen into this too. There's a lot of people, a lot of times when I see like some of these male content creators online that are just, and some of them who are just vile, disgusting human beings, and there's a part of me that like sees like the broken little boy that really just like wants to be accepted or wants to be loved. And it's like, there's a part of me that's just sort of like, oh my God, I mean, I'm not necessarily, I'm gonna be the one to heal them or whatever, but like, I think in some people, I think especially in a lot of women, it's one of the reasons why many of us get into relationships with men that are kind of, you know, broken, or the bad boys, so to speak. It's because we feel like we can heal them, like our love can heal them. And unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. I mean, I wish it did. I really do. But unfortunately, it just doesn't work like that. But I think that that's what's going on with Kristen and Dax. Is I think Kristen has this like maternal, nurturing, like savior energy within her that I think probably comes from a genuinely good place. But unfortunately, it can get you into situations where you feel like your love can heal someone that they have to heal themselves. I do read Dax Shepard as somebody who is trying to work on himself. I mean, I do definitely see a lot of arrogance. I've seen a lot of people call him a narcissist. I can totally see where that would be a thing. He is an addict, something that he's been open and honest about. And like I've said before, addiction and narcissism they're not automatically connected, but there is some overlap in that. And like when somebody is in their addiction, they will exhibit all the signs of narcissism. The only way you know for sure if an addict is or isn't a narcissist is when they're sober. And a lot of addicts, even when they're sober, can show some narcissistic tendencies. A lot of that is part of their sobriety, and you know, a lot of it is, you know, very self-focused and self-centered, and that is part of the process and stuff. And you know, I'm not, you know, I mean, I think everybody's just doing the best that they can, but I can see where people are jumping to narcissism. I've seen people comparing Dax and Kristen to Ryan and Blake. I mean, I get, because there is this tendency in both of those couples to kind of like be funny, and sometimes it comes across as like inappropriate humor. I actually don't think that they're that similar though. On the one hand, I see Dax and Kristen as being a lot more open and genuine, whereas Ryan and Blake are putting on a lot more of a show, so to speak. I also think that like Ryan is really big on making digs at Blake. I don't see Blake making digs at her husband as much, but she really likes to take digs at other people. Like they're very much like a biting humor kind of a thing. With Dax and Kristen, he does make little jabs at Kristen, which, you know, again, the reason why Ryan does it to Blake is probably his insecurity, but he comes across a lot more arrogant, whereas with Dax, when he makes those digs at Kristen, and maybe it's because he's more open and vulnerable, I see it more as his insecurity, and I think Kristen sees it that way too, because the way she looks at him when he makes a little dig at her, I feel like she's looking at him like she can tell that it's coming from his insecurity, and I think she's in on it. I'm not justifying it by any means, because I mean, I think that could be really exhausting, especially for her, but I think there's a little bit more self-awareness from them. I also don't see Kristen taking digs at anybody else. Kristen is not a Blake. I don't see Kristen as somebody who ever wants to take a dig at someone to hurt someone else's feelings. In fact, I think she strikes me as somebody that would intentionally not make jokes to hurt someone else's feelings. Like she's deliberately avoiding anything that would hurt somebody else. I think that's just part of her personality. I actually read Kristen as a lot more like, I have a video about Denise Richards, and that she's got the savior thing too. She's always rescuing animals, and she's always rescuing like people that need help, and it's just kind of like this big heart and always wanting to like help people that are less fortunate, and like, hey, my in-laws need a house, here, take my house. Like, oh, my ex-husband's new wife has to go to rehab, and my ex-husband's in rehab, and their kids need a place to stay, so let's let the kids stay with me. Like, that's Denise's thing. But Denise also gets taken advantage of a lot because she is so giving and she is so loving and she does have such a big heart. I read Kristen in a similar way. I think that Kristen just has this big heart and she just wants to help everybody, and she's drawn in a husband who is someone who needs help. And I mean, yeah, I think he's aware that he needs help. I mean, he's been in recovery, he's been in therapy. Like, I think he's got some self-awareness, but I also think that that's part of the appeal, is that I think she likes the idea of like helping people that need help, and he's kind of like, again, he's the wounded animal that she's like, ooh, let me rescue him. Isn't necessarily gonna lead to a healthy relationship and a healthy marriage. Denise Richards has famously had some very unhealthy marriages, but I think that's a similar mindset. It's like that. For a woman, it's like a savior complex of like, oh, I can save him, I can love him enough to heal him, like a Denise Richards and a Charlie Sheen type of a thing. Like a Kristen and a Dax, I think it's similar to that. I think Kristen just feels like, oh, I can love him enough and it will heal him. And, you know, because that seems to be her MO. And I've actually talked about this in my video about Denise Richards. It's similar to a Khloe Kardashian. Khloe has this kind of like savior complex with people, but I think Khloe has gone to the dark side. With the Denise, she doesn't appear to have done that at this point, where and Kristen the same way. It's like they're still so like open and loving and giving, and they're like, ooh, it's always a good intentions. It's not always helpful, and they're ultimately going to be disappointed because they can never love someone enough to truly heal them. but it's coming from a place of like, oh my God, I really want to love this person enough, or love this animal, or love this thing enough to heal, or whatever they need healing with. Khloe has shifted to doing it out of manipulation. Oh, well, let me take care of Dream because I'm gonna be the mother figure as a way to kind of get even with China, or like I'm gonna be the best baby mama to Tristan so that I win the baby mama contest, right? This kind of nurturing thing, I think it can wear on anyone that is involved in this. It absolutely can. If it's coming from like an open, loving place and it doesn't become manipulation, that's one thing, but it can also shift into manipulation, which I think is like when you start getting into a Khloe Kardashian area. And I have a video talking about her as well, where her like nurturing kind of tunes into, well, you owe me because I've nurtured you, or like I'm the best person, I'm the best baby mama, I'm the best aunt, I'm the best everything because I'm so nurturing and so loving, and it's kind of this like holding over people's heads and stuff. Whereas like a Kristen or a Denise don't seem to have fallen into that category yet, at least not based on their public image. So like being loving and nurturing can be a wonderful thing, and I'm not discouraging people from being loving and nurturing. You do have to be careful though, because especially as women, we're the receivers, we're not the givers. So if you turn on that nurturing quality, you turn on that, I mean, you can easily get into mothering, which can get into controlling, but you also get into this giving, you're gonna be depleted. You're gonna completely drain yourself, and you have to be really careful with that. And oftentimes when you do keep depleting yourself because you're giving so much, that's easily when it can turn, you can get into a really bad relationship because you can never love someone enough to heal them. They have to heal themselves. But also it can make you very resentful because you're so drained, and it can also turn very manipulative. So these are just things to be aware of. Again, I do think that being loving and nurturing as a woman, like, it's ingrained in us, it's natural, like it's not something to be ashamed of, but we also have to be very careful that we're not over giving, and also that we still have to have boundaries around who we are showing up and giving to, and that people aren't going to be taking advantage of us, because there are going to be people that are going to take advantage of you if you are a very loving, giving person. And as women, we have to make sure that we are also being filled up as well, because women can get drained and depleted if we give too much. We're the receivers, okay? The feminine, the woman, is the receiver. Unfortunately, in the world we have today, a lot of women are over giving, we're giving too much, and we're not getting our cup filled. And it's really important to make sure that you are getting your cup filled in whatever way that means, whether that be, you know, surrounded by family or friendships, or like people that really are also nurturing you. Like, because women have a tendency to just sort of give and nurture and care for other people, and not actually take the time to make sure that their needs are met. So that's just where I think we need to be very careful of over giving. So one of the clips I saw of Dax Shepard is he was talking about how he has a lot of insecurities within himself, like about his looks and his intelligence and things like that, but that he was overly arrogant in relationships. So like when he met Kristen, he's like, oh, I don't know if I want to be with somebody who's as good and as giving, and he said like Christian, and you know, someone who's as loving, who wants to rescue animals, not realizing he's the rescue animal. He didn't know if like she was going to be good enough for him because he was so arrogant in relationships. I would argue that that's actually a defense mechanism. I don't actually think that he is really that arrogant in relationships. I think he's actually incredibly insecure in relationships as well, and that the arrogance in relationships of like trying to figure out if this person is good enough for him, it's a defense mechanism. So I've seen people say things like, oh, Dax Shepard hates Kristen Bell. I don't think he hates Kristen. I think he hates himself, and he's taking that out on Kristen. That is a very, very common dynamic, and women need to be very careful of that. I've been guilty of getting in relationships like that a lot. It's an area I'm very familiar with. Men that do not feel good enough for you often they'll take digs at you. They'll try to tear you down. They will try to diminish you. Sometimes it'll be blatant, and sometimes it'll just be chipping away. It doesn't mean the man hates you. It means he hates himself. I saw a clip of Kristen Bell saying one time that like Dax broke up with her early on in the relationship and basically said that he thought that she deserved better, basically. And she already felt like she was in love with him, so she wanted to be with him and stuff. If there's anything that I have learned about relationships that I need to pass on, because I have had to learn this lesson the hard way so many times, if a man tells you that he is not good enough for you, believe him. And I'm not even somebody that really ascribes to like somebody who's good enough or not good enough or out of their league or not in this league or something. I believe in compatibility. I don't believe in like hierarchy of like who's good enough for who or something like that. I don't believe in that. But if a man believes that he is not good enough for you in whatever way, for whatever reason, believe him. Because if that's in his mind, he is going to try to tear you down to his level. Honestly, I don't really fully believe it's like out of hatred for the other person. I think it's self-hatred. It's them hating themselves. It's them not feeling good enough within themselves and trying to tear you down. It's not right, and I'm not justifying this by any means, but it's not about you, it's about them. And I think that that's where when people start saying things like, oh, Dax hates Kristen and she doesn't realize it. I think Kristen knows what he's doing. I think she's very aware of what it is that he's doing. And I think she knows that it's coming from his own insecurities and his own issues. I'm not saying that that makes it easier for her. I think it's also, I think that makes it easier for her to not make it about her and realize that it's about him. I'm not saying that it's not going to be draining on her. I'm sure it's going to be and probably already is. But if I could give advice to women, being somebody who's been in that situation many times, if a man tells you that you deserve better, believe him. Even if you're like, no, I deserve you, I want to be with you, like even if you're thinking that, because as women often we see the potential. As women, we don't always see the man in front of us, we see what he could be. And that's a good thing to have that kind of optimism. But if a man doesn't see that potential in himself, there's no amount of loving him, there's nothing you can do for him that is gonna make him overcome that. He has to see that potential in himself and he has to be willing to do the work for it. And oof, being in a relationship with an insecure man it's painful. It is painful. It breaks my heart when I see women in relationships like that, but you know, because I've been there and I know how it feels. Because he does make little digs at her. Like I made some notes here of like him, like he's kind of made fun of some of her acting training and like joked about some of her like acting classes. He's referred to her as frustratingly talented. Again, I know in his mind, I think that some of that is humor, but I think it's definitely coming from insecurity. And I don't even really think that he wants to tear her down. I think it's just that he is so insecure that like that's his defense mechanism. And I'm not justifying it by any means. It's more of an explanation. I also think that the Kristen Dax relationship does kind of point out an interesting shift in trends as far as like social media couples go. Because I think early on in social media, there was this push for everything to look perfect and curated. And then after a while, people started being like, no, we want to show something real. So people would start getting really real and raw and actually like showing up with what the issues were in their relationship. It was kind of the antithesis to this curated, perfected idea of relationships. It's like, oh, let's show that we do have struggles, that we are regular people. A lot of celebrities and then a lot of influencers were kind of, you know, jumping on this bandwagon of like, let's show that our relationship isn't perfect and let's show some of the cracks and the flaws and things like that so that we don't appear too perfect and curated and that we can be more relatable to people. And I think that that started out coming from a good place. Unfortunately, the shift got so bad that everybody is just exposing all of their like deep, dark, embarrassing secrets about their relationships and stuff. And it's getting to the point where some people are sharing so much that you're like, why would you even still be in a relationship? Like, it's almost as if these people are like bragging about all the red flags in their relationships and stuff as this way of seeming relatable. And it's gotten to the point now where there's a lot of people watching some of these couples and going like, why are you even together if you're that miserable? Like the pendulum kind of shifted too far in one direction. And I mean, I'd like to see it even out where like couples can actually feel like they can share some of the struggles that other people can relate to, but not literally just like humiliate each other under the guise of being real and relatable. But I do think also some of this, you know, I mean, it helps for me for making content because I can help point out some of these red flags to people that are happening in some of these relationships. But I do think that there's some things that women are kind of joking about because there's some things about couples and relationships that are actually really toxic, like red flags that have become normalized in relationships that we really should be calling out. And I do appreciate that we're calling them out more, like things like, you know, weaponizing competence and things like that. You know, a lot of really toxic behavior in relationships that are, like, it's all kind of bubbling up to the surface. Now we're having discussions about it. So I do think that some of this like oversharing it's turning into some good, but I also think it's kind of making everybody's relationships look toxic you know, and so it's like, all right, well now it's like you either have to curate a perfect looking relationship, or you're just basically like, hey, look at how toxic we are. And I think it would be nice if we saw more examples of couples who could be open about some of the struggles they've been through, but not also come across looking like they're just a completely toxic couple. But unfortunately, everything on the internet is all about extremes, and that's just unfortunately the world we live in now. There's also an interesting clip I've seen going around. I think it was Dax Shepard when he was a guest on Theo Von's podcast, and he was talking about how like his therapist told him that like, well, you know, Kristen's not your mother. Like, well, no, like, shouldn't I get a reward for like, hey, I didn't cheat, or hey, I came home and, you know, I was faithful, like, you know, where's my celebration and stuff? And I mean, I do think that some of that was exaggerated for humor's sake, and I will give him a little bit of leeway there, because again, he was on a comedian's podcast and he was trying to be funny. But there does seem to be a theme with him, and I think for a lot of men too, I think it's not just him, of like wanting praise, like so much praise literally for existing, and also like for the absolute bare minimum. And I think like Kristen's anniversary post is kind of an example of that, of like celebrating this man for not killing his wife because other men have killed their wives. It's like celebrating a man for not killing his wife is literally celebrating a man for the bare minimum. Like, it's not even like he's protecting you. It's like celebrating him for not ending you. Like, that's, I mean, that literally is the definition of a man getting praise for the absolute bare minimum. I mean, I would think that protecting a woman from other people would be bare minimum, but like protecting her from you is like a whole level below that. And yeah, he does have and I think he's not the only one. I think there's a lot of men out there, unfortunately, that literally want praise for just like, it's like, hey, I didn't cheat on you. Like, it's like, well, you're not supposed to. Like, you're not supposed to. It's like the Chris Rock bit where he's just like, these people that are like, I take care of my kids. It's like, you're supposed to, they're your kids. It's like people that want credit for things that's like, yeah, you're supposed to do that. Like, you shouldn't get more praise for not killing your wife. You protecting your wife from other people is still bare minimum. Like, you want praise for stuff that's not even at bare minimum. One of the things that Dax and Kristen kind of mentioned in one of the podcasts that I watched of them was kind of the idea of like, it's not that cheating isn't a big deal, but like cheating isn't something they would leave each other over and stuff like that and whatever. And I think like, look, everybody's gotta have their own boundaries when it comes to relationships and things like that. So like, you know, their choice. But I know there's a lot of conversation around cheating and like, is it stronger to stay or leave or whatever? Like, that conversation seems to be coming up with like Jelly Roll and Bunny and whatever, and this whole kind of thing, whatever. Here's the thing. If there's no consequences to something, then something is deemed acceptable. For men primarily, they need to know that there are consequences to their actions in order to act right. Like, I mean, that, like, if a man thinks that there is no consequences to a negative action, he will do the negative action. Like, fortunately, that's the way a lot of men operate. So this idea that like, it's a power move to stay in a relationship if somebody cheats or something like that, if a person knows that you're going to stay and that there aren't any consequences to cheating, they're going to cheat. Because there are no consequences to it. Like, particularly men need to know that there are consequences to their actions. Some men will do it anyway, and they'll just either try to avoid the consequences or they'll face the consequences or whatever. It's not going to guarantee that someone's going to be faithful. But if there are no consequences to a negative behavior, a lot of people, particularly men, are going to go down that path. So I want to get into one of my favorite topics to talk about, and that is the Madonna complex, or the Madonna whore complex, which I can't use that other word or else everything gets censored. So you know what I'm talking about when I talk about that. It's kind of the virgin whore, the wife mistress, the good girl, bad girl complex. And I actually really loved listening to some of the interviews with Kristen Bell, because I love that she's kind of really very openly navigating the complexities around this sort of like the good girl, bad girl balance and figuring that out. I remember a while ago, and I don't know what movie it was, but there was a movie that Kristen Bell did where she was kind of playing more of a bad character. I don't know if it was Burlesque, because I know she was really great in that. That's like a guilty pleasure movie for me. I don't remember if it was that one, but it was like she was playing kind of more of a bad girl character. And I remember distinctly her saying that Dax really loved when she played kind of like that like mean bitchy character and stuff. And I was like, ooh, I can kind of see that because she is such a good girl. She is so sweet. And for a lot of guys, like if they do have like the good girl in their life, like seeing her as a bad girl can be a turn on. Like that can be a fun thing. Also too, because she has this sort of like angelicness around her, the type that's always trying to like rescue animals and, you know, help people, and she's got this kind of like angelic way about her, seeing that other side of her, like the parts of her that might not be so perfect and pristine, especially because Dax has so many insecurities about himself, and I can see where he would be like, oh good, she's not perfect, like she's not angelic, like I can see some cracks in this Mother Teresa wife that I have, so to speak. Like I can see where he would find that appealing. And Dax even said in the interview that I watched on his podcast of him and Kristen that he said that she had a nice balance of like good girl and bad girl. Like she wasn't, like she liked to follow rules and she liked to do things the right way and everything, but she also, you know, hadn't been afraid to, you know, sleep around when she was younger and have her fun and things like that and whatever, and that he really liked that, which kind of makes sense. And I've said this in many other videos, but I think it's worth repeating. Women are unfortunately forced to choose between being the good girl and the bad girl. Men put us in those categories. I think society puts women in those categories, but I think women, as women, we put each other and ourselves in those categories. Like we're forced to kind of pick a side. You know, are you the wife or the mistress? Are you the good girl or the bad girl? Most women are never going to be satisfied being one or the other. We want to be both. Like we want to be able to find our, you know, our sort of regal queen, or that sort of like angelic side, or that mothering side, like our light feminine energy. But we also want the bad girl. Like we want the side of us that is also like sexual and turned on and like raw and expresses the not so pretty parts of ourselves, you know? And it doesn't necessarily have to be like blatantly sexual, but the part that, you know, wants to dig in the dirt, or the type that, you know, wants to express our anger and like express the parts of us that are not like pretty and light and lovely. Like I think most women are never going to truly be satisfied unless we can figure out both, because we have both within us, but unfortunately so many women are limited to like pick a side. And if you're not 100% good or you're not 100% bad, like you're just, nobody knows what to do with you. And I like the fact that you have somebody like a Dax Shepard that is appreciating the fact that Kristen is trying to embrace both sides of her. I think she's struggling to navigate that, but I appreciate her being so open about it. One of the things that I've seen Kristen Bell get some pushback for recently is she did Dax's podcast, and she made the comment about how she wishes she'd slept around more before she got married. And she got a lot of pushback from guys that were just sort of like, oh my God, she said to her husband, she's looking to cheat, like she's looking to have her whole phase, like whatever, which I think a lot of guys are taking that out of context. When I went back and watched that, first of all, I actually think that Kristen's humor is not fully appreciated. And I'm not saying that she doesn't have some tone-deaf humor sometimes as far as like her anniversary posts or things like that. But in that instance, I could totally see, because she said like on like a scale of 1 to 10, she considered her promiscuity like a 4. And she's like, yeah, I don't know, I kind of wish I was like a 6. To me, that's like, okay, that's a humor thing. Like she's kind of trying to be humorous. Like, oh, well, Anna's like a 4. Maybe I'd like to be like a 6. Like I totally read that as like her humor. Not that she was like, oh my God, I regret not sleeping around with like everybody in the world. Like I think she was kind of playing with the humor. However, Kristen did marry a man in Dax Shepard who is very open about being very sexually promiscuous. So I can kind of see where, while I do think that Kristen's saying she wished she'd slept around more before she got married, like I do think that that was her humor. But I do also see the idea that she's like, well, my husband was so sexually promiscuous before we got together. Like I could see her feeling like, oh, maybe I should have been, because Dax is obviously drawn to Kristen when she kind of is a little bit more of the bad girl. I do kind of feel like there's a little bit of insecurity in her of like, oh, well, maybe I should have been more of a bad girl, because I think that that's kind of what my husband is drawn to, and I could see where she would be feeling that, you know what I mean? Like, I don't necessarily think that I don't think she's looking to sleep around. I didn't get that from that at all. So I think some of the backlash from that was guys who did not know Kristen and Dax at all as celebrities, and it was kind of they were kind of jumping on the whole like Ayesha Curry hate train with them assuming that Ayesha Curry was going to sleep around, which I have a whole video about that and why I thought that was ridiculous. But yeah, I think that there were some of the manosphere guys that were kind of taking that out of context. I don't actually think that, I think Kristen was I think it was her humor, but I also think there was some sense of like, ooh, maybe I should have been more promiscuous because that's what my husband was, and he kind of likes the bad side of me, so maybe I wish I had been a little bit more of the bad girl when I was younger, kind of thing. But there was an interesting conversation in the Kristen Dax podcast that I watched where Kristen talked about that she had identified as cute but didn't feel sexy. I thought that was interesting because they started to kind of get into the idea that for Kristen, being cute felt safer, particularly growing up in a very religious household and things like that, and that she felt more comfortable identifying as cute than she did as sexy, which is something I know I can relate to, and I think that there's a lot of women out there that could probably relate to that. It's safer to think of yourself as cute than it is to think of yourself as sexy in some instances, but also like there's so much comparison that we have as women, and you know, I mean, that's something that I always felt completely. I mean, so I could relate to that statement a lot, as like, oh, I'm cute but I'm not like sexy. But then Kristen said to Dax that she thought that he had brought out a lot of her sexiness, and he kind of was like, oh yeah, you're tigress and stuff, and I was like, ooh, that's the appeal. Right? Like, that's the appeal that Kristen has to Dax. And I think that that became very clear as I was watching. Kristen is the good girl. She's the girl that, like, you know, she's Mother Teresa, she's angelic, she's like rescuing animals and rescuing people, and she's like always wants to help, and like that's her vibe. Dax is the bad boy. She gets to be bad with him. There's definitely a sexual component there that she's getting out of that relationship. Now, I'm not saying that she should have to deal with the little digs and jabs that he makes and whatever, and like, and that she has to deal with all his insecurities. I'm not saying that, but like that's the draw. Like, that's the appeal. That's what she gets out of this relationship. He brings out the bad girl in her, and I think she likes that. I think she likes the sexual component. I think she likes the sexual element of it. There's the element of sex appeal of the bad boy. You know, the okay, I'm a good girl for everybody else, I'm good for everybody else, but like, I get to be bad for this guy. That doesn't always lead to a healthy relationship. I mean, if you can find that in a healthy relationship, then congratulations to you. But like, I do think that there is that element when it's just like a lot of people are like, you know, acting like Kristen just doesn't own her worth and she just settled for Dax and that she's miserable. And you know, I mean, I hope that she is actually okay. I really do. But she's getting something from the relationship too. Now, is what she's getting from the relationship, as far as like that sexual energy, that sexual component, is that worth everything else she's dealing with? Is that worth having to be there for him struggling through his addictions and him making little jabs at her, and you know, the way that he talks about their relationship and things like that and whatever, and like, is it worth that? Only she could make that decision. I mean, that has to be on her. But like, I really do think she's in on this. I don't think that there is a part of her that like just doesn't see it. I think she's in on it. I think she's just actively choosing to deal with the toxic stuff because she likes the stuff she gets from it. And I also think she's also drawn to that rescuing. She's drawn to rescuing everybody, including him. And I think that that's where the appeal comes in. And I'm not saying it's healthy, and I do think it's valid to look at their relationship and see like, if that's something that you would want to be in, I think that's a valid thing to look at. But like, I think she's in on it. Like, I don't think that this is like a woman who's just like so insecure and like doesn't see what's going on and is just kind of being like used and tricked by this guy or something. I think that she's in on this. She's actively choosing this. I hope that it isn't her actively choosing something like really dangerous and that this isn't a sign of something worse. I do think that she's in on it. Like, I don't think that this is a helpless woman that doesn't know what she's doing. I think she does know what she's doing. It is valid to look at and decide whether or not this is actually something you'd want to be a part of, but I do think that she's choosing this. I do know that, you know, Dax is openly an addict in recovery. He had a relapse a while back after 16 years of sobriety, you know, and that's something that Kristen, I think she went into it like knowing that he was an addict. And I did see an interview where she talked about the fact that they had a plan in place. You know, he got an injury to take medications, and they had a plan in place if he had to take medications and stuff like that. It's a tricky situation choosing to get into a relationship with somebody who is an addict. I would never recommend anybody get into a relationship with someone who has an active addiction. Because when someone has an active addiction, they're actively in their addiction, they can't be in a loving, committed relationship with you because they're always the most committed to their addiction. Choosing to be in a relationship with someone who's in recovery is a tricky thing. You're kind of always in that place of like never knowing when someone is going to fall off the wagon. And I think, you know, it has to be a personal choice that you make. And I actually go more into things like addiction and relationships and navigating relationships with addiction in other videos. Like I just recently did a video about Britney Spears and that situation. So I recommend you check out some of my other videos. But yeah, like I'm not saying that anybody who's an addict who is actively sober, I'm not saying that you shouldn't ever get into a relationship with them, but I do think that you have to proceed with caution. So yeah, I don't think Kristen and Dax are the worst celebrity relationship ever. I don't even think they're as bad as Blake and Ryan, and I have a video talking about Blake and Ryan. I think there are definitely red flags, for sure. But I do think that they're both aware of the red flags, and I think they're both going into this with their own stuff. They do talk a lot about fighting and a lot about fights, and you know, I know that they've kind of talked about the idea that like you're never gonna just like meet someone and they're gonna be your perfect person and everything's gonna be perfect all the time. And that's totally true. Like that is absolutely true. But I do also think that there is a navigation of like, okay, when are we just, you know, conflicted over this one issue, and when are our values completely different? Which I think is something you need to look at. And also, if you're constantly fighting with somebody and you're constantly in conflict and you're never on the same page with someone, that might be a sign that you're just not compatible. And it's not necessarily about expecting the other person to be perfect. I think we do absolutely have to give people some room for humanity, because you're never going to meet a perfect person. You're never going to meet someone who's a saint. That said, you do also have to have boundaries in place. You have to have your deal breakers. I know people always want to tout on this like unconditional love thing. Love can be unconditional, but relationships have conditions. Like, a lot of people have accused Kristen of being the cool girl, and I do think that she has some aspects to that, of this idea that like, you know, well, I would forgive you for cheating, we'd work on things and stuff. And what her boundaries are around that is her decision. But also, you know, she does let him talk down to her, and I do think that she overlooks that to a certain extent. I do think that there is some concept of her playing the cool girl and trying to sort of win him over for being cool, and there is an aspect to that. I don't think she's the worst case of that by any means. I've seen people that are definitely worse, so I don't think it's so glaring that she's just a complete doormat for him. I do think she tolerates a lot and probably should stand up for herself a little bit more, but you know, it's her decision. I'm all for people realizing that relationships are not going to be all just like, you know, sunshine and picnics and romance and things like that. Like, I think that's valid because life happens. The thing is that I'm all for two people saying, okay, we're gonna go through the struggles of life together, versus getting into a relationship and your struggles are the other person. Like, the other person is the cause of your struggles. And those are two different things. And I think that's where we have to be a little bit careful about telling people that like, oh, well, relationships aren't going to be all perfect. Of course they're not going to be all perfect, because life is not all perfect. There has to be a limit. Like, you have to know where your deal breakers are, where your boundaries are, where the red flags are, what is important to you and what you are okay with compromising on and what you're not okay with compromising on. And it's really important to figure that stuff out within yourself and then show up in a relationship with those things in mind. Because again, we do have to accept the humanity in people. People aren't going to be perfect. Nobody is. But there's also a difference between expecting somebody to be perfect, but also not constantly feeling like you have to always compromise and you have to always make excuses for the other person. And that's where you have to navigate things. I don't think that Kristen and Dax are the worst relationship ever. I do think that they are relatable. Dax has talked about a lot of insecurities around Kristen making more money than him and being more successful than him, and that's a natural thing for men to feel. It is. And you know, it's one of the reasons why I'm always like, well, then don't get into a relationship with a woman who's more successful than you if you're gonna be that insecure about it, you know what I mean? Like maybe you being the more successful and higher earning person in the relationship, maybe that just needs to be the deal. I think if a man is in a relationship with a woman he wants to be in a relationship with and he does love her and she happens to be more successful and make more money, I don't really think it's going to work long term, but you know, if they want to try to work it out, that's on them. I do respect a guy who is acknowledging that it's difficult, but he's trying to navigate it. But I do think it's a warning sign when a guy is actively trying to tear her down because of his own insecurities. That's where it starts to be a problem. Like he has the insecurities, he's working through it, that is what it is. But when he starts to make jabs at her to tear her down because of his insecurities, that's where I think it becomes an issue. I think in Kristen's case, I think she knows that that's what he's doing, and I think she's aware of it, and I think she is navigating it. But I do think that eventually, if it hasn't already really taken its toll on her, I think it will. Because it would on anybody. I mean, because Kristen's human too, you know what I mean? So I think that that's where I see things getting a little weird. But yeah, I would love to know your thoughts on Kristen and Dax, or anything I talked about in this video, or any other video suggestions. Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a big thumbs up and be sure you subscribe to my channel. Honestly, any engagement on this channel really does help to boost it in the algorithm so more people can get this message. If you would like to heal your cool girl tendencies or learn to navigate your like good girl, bad girl aspects or things like that, I highly recommend you check out my guided journals, the Recovering Pick Me Girl guided journal and the Dark Feminine Energy guided journal. They're both available on Amazon. Details in the description box below, along with links to all my social media accounts. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.